Well, Hilary, this is going to be fun having this interview, and thanks for this first question about what is most dear to me about the book. I might go on for all 20 minutes talking about that because it's becoming more and more dear to me. Maybe starting back at the beginning, I mean, what's dear to me is that because we took the trouble to talk at much greater length about 3 years ago, we kind of unearthed layers of our relationship that neither of us had really understood at all well. And it took a long time to understand it. It was well worth writing the book because we spent a lot of those 2 years struggling with the kind of comments we write to one another in the book. So the whole process of just feeling like we developed a deeper and more meaningful relationship is certainly one of the things that's dear to me. Another thing that's dear to me is that quite a few people who've read the book already have said that it makes action inquiry much clearer to them. And this is not something I expected because I'd been writing about action inquiry, after all, for about 40 years. And I thought I was real good at telling stories that made it live. But obviously, our story comes at a much deeper level than the other stories. And there's much, and it's about a topic that everybody is deeply concerned about, namely love. And not just people who are leaders in organizations. So that's very dear to me that people have reacted that way. And I think also, of course, in a way you could say that we really practiced action inquiry in writing the book, not only in the way that our two autobiographies are parallel to one another, and we commented on one another's writing and included that in the book. But also in that we invited our community of friends to look at an early draft of the book, and it got panned at the beginning, you might say. And we had to really struggle with the feedback that we got, and we ended up, as they say, improving the book enormously. So that's a really dear feeling about the book. And I guess finally, I'd say right now that the fact that also readers are reporting that it makes it possible for them to look at parts of their life that it's hard otherwise to think about systemically. It's so hard for us to be disciplined and systemic about thinking about the different loves in our life and comparing them and trying to learn lessons from them. So those are some of the things that are dear to me. What about you?
Of course, what you've been saying kicks up things for me. In a way, I join you with finding what is dear to me through our readers' responses. You know, we're seeing some things that come to us on email, often together, and then even on Amazon reviews, that remind us that our story is, I wouldn't say a universal story, but it certainly seems to be a pretty common story. So that's been very dear to me, that the idea that what can appear otherwise too private or too personal, in putting it out there, that it was received with the generosity that I think we shared it with, because I really do think it was coming from this idea of thinking through the difficulties of relationship. And part of it was, how could it be so difficult? You know, we've known each other forever. How could there be so many secrets from ourselves? Secrets that I had been unconscious about in myself, and perhaps also for you. So in a way, what's most dear then is allowing the elephant in the room to be talked about, because the elephant in a way only became apparent to me, I think, as I got older. And part of that elephant is this relationship between men and women, which is what has been resonating with many of our readers. And as somebody said, you know, so much of feminist discourse is about women talking to other women. And so here we were brave enough to actually talk to each other. So I think, you know, bringing relationship front and center and actually practicing that has been very dear to me over the years. And so this book making that real, making that an invitation to others. I think also bringing the developmental work that I have learned most keenly from you into the book really helped me and perhaps us to understand our own journey. And therefore it's also dear to learn for all of us. There's a time and stage in our life when we can tackle certain material, when we can tackle certain stories, and chances are it comes a little bit later in our life. So to find a community, to resonate with folks that we didn't heretofore know, that feels very, very special. I just got an email from some folks in Australia. Australia, I've never been, and so this is how one finds a new community. So maybe to turn the conversation back to you, if I'm saying, bringing these issues of development to feminism, bringing the practice of relationship into action inquiry, all of which I do think is also part of the larger umbrella of the action research work, I would turn back and ask you, Bill, what do you feel you've learned, or how do you feel you've crystallized some of the work that you had been doing for many decades that has also been dear to you in this book?
Right. Well, one very, I guess now it feels like concrete way that I think I've learned new stuff from doing the book is that I tended to highlight in my own thinking that the importance of how I behave towards both men and women, but let's focus on women now, intergendered relationships. And that if I could behave sufficiently mutually with women, then that proved that there was a mutual relationship between us. But I think I was, and I understood that I was white and male and privileged in an almost infinite number of ways. But I don't think I realized the degree to which even my so-called mutual behavior could be glossed over with this sense of my being a person of power. And also, I was, although I was feeling it, I wasn't really totally aware of the degree to which I tended to feel subordinate to women I wanted to relate to. So I wasn't aware of the degree to which, while I was receiving the women perhaps as more powerful than they felt, I was being received as a man exercising more power than I realized I was exercising. Not that this prevented me absolutely from having friendships with women at all, but it definitely came as a significant learning, I think, the degree to which I hadn't really accounted for the power of the historic sources of perceptions of privilege and power. So that's certainly one. I guess the other one to mention would be in the realm of love itself. I mean that it, even though I had tried to reflect on my life and my relationships, I hadn't really been systematically developmental about my analysis of myself in that realm. And first of all, it required the willingness, which took some doing, to actually write out the more embarrassing stories. And once I did that, of course, that was required in order to be able to reflect about them very much. And so gradually, I think I realized that it took me a long, long time to become more fully mutual and less captured by my own egotistical needs. And I think I would credit our work on the book with my feeling more fundamentally successful in my relationships than ever now.
It's difficult terrain, isn't it, to really begin to feel into power differences. And I think both of us, in different ways, wanted to, although what part wanted to is interesting, but I think both of us wanted to not perhaps dig in to what really are the power differences. And it so happens that this conversation about privilege, male privilege, white privilege, is happening around us. So I think we become an example of that. And how do we actually have that conversation that allows different voices? Because I think often that conversation about privilege has been about beating the other over the head. And I think what we both see in the book is we each deserved to be beaten over the head, or to put it more kindly, we each had to hold parts of ourselves that were a little bit unknown to ourselves and the other with more compassion if we really wanted to reflect on them. So if there's a crystallizing learning that I think I would love to share with others, it's that reflection has to move beyond this realm of just what is rational, what is conscious, what is most available to us when we sit down, if you want, what is just in the cerebral cortex. It has to engage the heart, and it has to engage the other. And I think in that way we were lucky to have a partnership that could allow that mix of gentleness, but also holding each other to account. In a way that I think fostered better relationships in both of our lives. I end the book, as you might remember, with my account of my relationship with Nathan, which, in a way is also about power and love. Of course, and we live in this larger context where supposedly the story is, if there's love, there's no power. If there's power, there's no love. And we say no, and I think help to chart and then maybe later articulate the developmental journey where power and love does indeed begin to intertwine.
Right. Yeah, that's definitely one of the ways in which I've reconceived the developmental spiral, is that at the early action logics, power, love, and inquiry are seen as mutually exclusive, and we began to model and experience the importance of bringing love, power, and inquiry together, and that in any form of mutual power and truly mutual love, they will be together. They require one another, because power can't be mutual without feedback from the other that lets them influence what's going on. So I certainly learned that's been a very important clarification for me.
At the same time, it seems, when all of a sudden the question of what is gender, and that we live on a gender spectrum, and transgendering, all of that is coming as a very strong kind of flurry of rethinking for all of us in society right now. So in a way, I think the book happens within that also. So gender, power, it seems as a species we're actually beginning to grapple with what might be some of the more fundamental ways in which we can co-create true communities of inquiry, true communities of love. I certainly hope so.
Right, and I think on that note, also it's, as you were saying a moment ago, that one has to go beyond kind of generalizations about issues of gender and privilege, and really begin to be able to talk about one's own experience, and that is difficult to do with people who are different from you. For a straight person to talk to a gay person, and for either one to talk with a transgendered person, to have that conversation be useful, it really has to include stories about one's personal experience, and trying to reach beyond our personal experience up to this point, and how to reach. So I think our book helps people to reach a little further.
And perhaps we also make it clear that it's okay to make mistakes in that endeavor, right? We're very good at modeling good mistakes.
And bad mistakes, but big mistakes, little mistakes. We have definitely modeled mistakes.
Thank you, Bill.
Okay, thank you.